Welcome to a July 7th edition of the PHLY Eagles show. I'm Zach Berman. That's Fran Duffy. And that smell in the air right now might be the trash in Philadelphia, but I think it's football because.
Oh, no. Well, that was such a good open by Zach, and it's a shame that he could not close the deal, as we'll wait for Zach to jump back on. Zach's Wi-Fi, reminiscent of Bo's Wi-Fi, obviously, joining in with the chat. Still miss Bo, as we mentioned. Zach, I was just saying, this is just an unbelievable open, and you couldn't land it.
Yes.
You couldn't stick the landing.
I got so excited that I kicked my Ethernet out of excitement. That smell in the air could be the trash in Philadelphia, but it's actually football because we are 2 weeks out from the Eagles reporting to training camp. The Eagles report to training camp on 2 weeks from tomorrow, their first practice. 2 weeks from Wednesday. We are brought to you, of course, by TrueMark Financial Credit Union. And I kicked the Ethernet because I was so excited because football is around the corner. When July 4th passes, that means to me summer's over and training camp's about to begin. But we don't need to rush it. I should ask you, Fran, first off, how was your holiday weekend?
It was great. We had the 3-day weekend. Had a blast on 4th of July. Walked in the local parade with Francis because he did for our Little League organization. Had we were able to walk in the parade, so we walked like 5.5 miles for that, and then went to the pool all day. So I'm throwing him and a couple of our nephews and nieces around, and it was a great weekend. How about you?
Yeah, it was very nice. The first time that my children experienced fireworks, and they were scared at first, and they loved it. I think they're already looking forward to next July 4th. Had some nice time at the beach, and
so excited that he once again kicked the Ethernet cable out. Just a fascinating first 2 minutes here from ZB.
As I said on the Anthony Gargano show today, that I enjoyed some Smitty's clam chowder, and if you know, you know. So Smitty's clam bar in Summers Point, and I don't know whether to go the red or the white. So what I do is I mix it together. I go half red, half white. So instead of Manhattan clam chowder and New England clam chowder, I call it like a Jersey Shore clam chowder, and it is amazing. It's my favorite thing.
Interesting. I've never heard of that. So same bowl, the mix of the red and the white.
Yes,
that's a ZB special. I've never heard of this before. Oh man, this is just what an unbelievable start here. I'm going to be honest. I am flabbergasted by this development here with the chowder. I don't even know that Zach knows that he keeps kicking himself out. Maybe it's just happening to me, and I'm sitting here talking to nobody. But just a fantastic start. Look, we are going to be talking through, as long as Zach's Wi-Fi holds up and his Ethernet holds up. We are going to be talking through the quarterback room, Jalen Hurts, and getting through as soon as Zach is able to keep the Ethernet in place.
Yes. I gotta tell you, I'm embarrassed by this. I was excited. I've been on my computer a lot. I'm not kicking it. I don't know if it's a loose cord. We will get to the bottom of it. But yeah, I enjoyed the clam chowder. But what I enjoy more than, and we'll get to the clam chowder at the end of the show. How about that? Because before we do that, we got to talk quarterbacks. And Fran and I were text messaging last night, and we were discussing the training camp previews, because we're in a countdown to camp here. And so we're talking quarterbacks. And what we said, the first place to start needs to be quarterbacks, right? Naturally, that's the case. It's a Monday. I should say that the headline here has 3 names. Really, we're going to be talking about 5 names here. So obviously, Jalen Hurts, Tanner McKee, Kyle McCord. We will talk about Dorian Thompson-Robinson. And we will also talk about the new quarterbacks coach as well, because that factors in to everything going on with the Eagles. But from a big picture overview here, before we get into the big deal, I want to know, Fran, how do you feel about training camp 2 weeks away? Are you like me, where once July 4th passes, your body starts getting primed for camp? Are you like, I could use a few more weeks of summer to grind the college football film? Where do you stand on this?
I told Meg this morning that this is like I don't get the Sunday scaries really, but this day where it's like, all right, the 4th of July has now passed, and it's that first Monday after 4th of July. Whether that's if 4th of July is on a Wednesday, a Monday, whenever that first week starts after 4th of July, yeah, you start to get like, all right, because now it's the people like you where it's like, oh, it's 2 weeks till the vets report for training camp. Now it's like, oh man, that impending sense of the football season comes. Obviously, I love it. I'm very excited for football season. It is a little weird for me because I feel like when I was in college and when I worked at Temple, July was the off month. July was where I completely checked out, and camp didn't start until like the days, like it was July 28th, July 29th was when we had to report. So all of July we were out. And so now it's a little bit different with the NFL, but my college days are still kind of, feeding into that a little bit.
Yeah. When I was at the Inquirer, they used to tell me at the end of minicamp, go away. Like, we don't want to see you until training camp begins. Like, take your time. Just go away. Unless a player gets arrested, you're gone. Then once camp begins, it's like someone who hibernates, right? We'll see you come the winter. And so that's kind of how I feel about that. So, who I imagine is excited for training camp, even though he's newly married, he's a football guy like you and me. And that is Jalen Hurts. So to begin here with the big deal presented by Cherry Hill Mitsubishi, the big deal today will be Jalen Hurts' training camp, because we all know that at Eagles training camp, the biggest story, more than
so we're now at 4 times in the first 7 minutes. This is going to be fun to track. I hope everybody who is at home is tracking exactly what is happening here as we kick this off. I will say my big thing for training camp, as Jalen Hurts and the rest of the quarterback room reports, I hope that it's a little bit more consistent than what Zach's connection has been for the first 7 minutes.
I got to tell you here.
This is unbelievable. All right, so we're at 5 times in the first 8. This is just phenomenal. I will say, and we'll talk about it once Zach gets in. My guess is at some point he's going to start trying to do a restart here to give himself a little bit of a boost. But I think the big thing for me, and I will reiterate it to Zach, a lot of people will make a big deal about like completion percentages in camp and in practice and things like that. I put a little bit less emphasis on that. I think the bigger thing is like the overall vibe of the quarterback execution and of the quarterback room in general. You'd love to be able to just see the general sense of like confidence and poise throughout the course of practice. And you're not really going to feel it until you get to like week 2. Right, of training camp. The first few days, it's all installed. It's going to be very similar to the scheme, or to the spring rather, where they're just kind of reintroducing the scheme to everybody. We know it's a new offensive coordinator and play caller with Kevin Patullo taking the reins from Kellen Moore. But I think at the end of the day, what you want is the quarterback and the passing game in general just to have a feel, have a rhythm. We've talked about the potential for the verticality of the offense to see a little bit of an uptick there, a little bit more aggressiveness down the field. And so for me, once Zach gets on and we kind of hash out the big deal a little bit more, I'll get into what I think that looks like in terms of the new verticality in the offense, Zach.
Yeah. So first off, I apologize here. I just took out the Ethernet completely. And now we're just rolling with Wi-Fi here. Okay.
I like it.
So I feel good about this. And I'm sorry to put that undue pressure on you, but you know what? It's a good part about talking about Jalen Hurts, because sometimes things happen in a football game. You got to react. And that's Jalen Hurts. So the place I was hoping to start with you is, what are you expecting from Jalen Hurts at training camp this summer?
Yeah, I mean, a year ago, remember one of the big storylines was that, he didn't throw an interception all training camp. And my big thing going into that, like, yes, that's good. It's not like that's a bad thing, but that also is not a precursor to an MVP season. That's not to say like, oh man, he was outstanding because he didn't throw an interception. To me, like, practice is for like being aggressive and trying things and trying to push limits and test windows out and, just kind of push. And we kind of saw that over the first 3 quarters of the year. Really, the majority of the season was that with Jalen Hurts in this pass game, as Zach drops off again, with Jalen Hurts and this pass game, everything was underneath. I wrote that piece in, what was it, mid-October, late October last year, where we talked about when things broke down for Jalen Hurts and he had to hold on to the ball. And sometimes that was from his own doing, but when he had to hold on to the ball, he was exponentially less aggressive, than what we had seen from him during that MVP quality season in 2022, from what we saw from him the previous year, even in 2023, before things unraveled in the final quarter of the season. So for me, I want to be able to see him be aggressive, and I'm not talking, we see the deep ball shots down the sideline to AJ Brown. I'm not talking about like the 3-step rhythm fades where it's just like, all right, catch, drop back, 3-step, drop it into a bucket outside the numbers to AJ Brown. Those are those low probability vertical throws that we've talked about in the offense. And look, AJ and Jalen have a chemistry with that. So that's always going to be a part of it. What I'd like to see more of, and what I think we will see a little bit more of, are more of those design shot plays, the deep post routes to, we saw the one to Devontae Smith in the Super Bowl, those kinds of plays, deep dig routes, attacking the deep intermediate middle of the field. So I think, to me, being able to see a little bit more of that in team drills. And again, I don't think we're going to see that, Zach, until we get into like the dog days of camp. Early on, it's going to be very reminiscent of the spring of OTAs and mini camp, where it's day 1 install, day 2 install, a lot of quick game stuff. That's the stuff you're going to see early on. But I think as we get into day 6, day 7, day 8, day 9, as we inch closer and closer to that first preseason game, I think that's when we're going to start to see a little bit more aggressiveness from Jalen Hurts, from the scheme with Kevin Patullo, the types of things they'll be installing by the time you get to practice 8, practice 9, practice 10. That's where I expect that aggressiveness to really show up.
Yes, first off, you're a pro. Okay, I got to tell you, I was on the Anthony Show with Bill this morning. And I was saying how the hardest thing is to do a solo show. And then here I am just trying to put this pressure on you. But yeah, I figured out a harder thing to do than a solo show, which is when you are on a double show and then the person keeps dropping.
We're good.
I don't know what the issue is. Yeah, so we're going to battle through. So here you go. You're right about last year's training camp. Jalen, he didn't turn the ball over. I thought he looked sharp. Bo and I disagreed about that. Bo, and I understood what Bo was saying. Like it wasn't this incredible standout, amazing camp, but I did think Jalen looked sharp last year, especially compared to how he looked in the spring.
Right.
But I think the expectations this year, there's a few things. First off, the way he finished last year, Super Bowl MVP, he's carrying significant momentum. He played well in the spring as well. So that's the big difference between this year and last year. The spring performance, I think, is you want him to carry over what he did. There's not really that same type of drama, for lack of a better term, going into the training camp last year. There was all that speculation about him and Sirianni. There was the way they ended the 2023 season. You're not going to have that this year. I think the conditions aren't in place. I think really what it is how good can Jalen be? Yep. And we've talked throughout the summer about them passing more. I don't think you'll see that as pronounced during training camp. I do think that when you talk about the lack of interceptions, one of the things I would want to see from Jalen, because I think it's going to be a big part of their offense, is going downfield more during training camp, seeing that vertical element during training camp. I thought you probably had the best analysis of anyone this offseason, well, about most things, but certainly about Kevin Patullo. When you have exposure to Kevin Patullo, you kind of know kind of the way he thinks about offense, and I'm expecting Kevin Patullo to have more of the vertical element. And one thing that I think is productive for the viewers and the listeners to keep in mind is that Patullo's background. We associate Patullo with Sirianni and maybe like Frank Reich. Patullo's background is with Chan Gailey. Okay, and like he came up with Chan Gailey. So think about those Ryan Fitzpatrick offenses in Buffalo. Think about those Ryan Fitzpatrick offenses with the Jets. I think that that's something that, certainly the Eagles have the talent at wide receiver to spread the ball out and to go deep downfield. And I want to see, because I actually think, and you talked about this in your scouting reports, that Jalen has a strength in terms of his downfield passing. And that's something that I think the Eagles should really lean into this year relative to last year.
Yeah. And that's what, again, I think that we what I'm hoping to see is by the time we get to the second week of camp, you're seeing more, like I said, like those deep post routes, those design plays, not just like the rhythm fades outside the numbers, like I said, but deep dig routes, deep post routes, where you just see a little bit more verticality from the offense with Dallas Goedert down the seam, right? Like those kinds of things are what I am most excited to see, and what I'm hoping that we see a little bit more of as we get into the dog days of camp.
Are you expecting, or is there a particular receiver that you think is most important in terms, like, do you want to see the connection with AJ? Do you want to see the connection with Devontae? Do you want to see him really focus on bringing Jahan Dotson along?
Yeah, honestly, I think with the two primaries, right? I think with AJ and with Devontae, and I would expect it to look any different from what we've seen. I mean, we know that he's got a rapport with both of these players. We've seen them hook up with plays. You have the variety of easy button stuff, right? All right, you're going to hit Devontae Smith on a slant if he's ISO'd by himself, or if he's put into the slot. They're going to work AJ that, or they're going to work Devontae that way. And we know like they can play ISO ball with AJ Brown as well. We've talked about that as a bug of the offense, but that can at times be a feature as well. It's like, all right, you get into money downs, you get into third down. You need guys that can win one-on-one, and both AJ and Devontae have shown that they can win one-on-one, and Jalen Hurts has shown the willingness to say, like, yeah, I'm going to go to those guys in those crunch time situations. So I think at the end of the day, it doesn't matter to me whether it is AJ Brown or Devontae Smith. One of the things that I love about this pairing is that both players, AJ and Devontae, have that ability to line up inside, line up outside, be that ISO player, work in combination with each other. And Zach mentioned earlier on, some of the things that I had done with Kevin Patullo when I was working there with the Eagles. And it was just interesting. And look, these weren't like long, thorough. It's not like I spent hours and hours in a meeting room with Kevin Patullo or talking about him, about his philosophy for hours and hours. I want to give that impression, but just in some of the breakdowns that we did, a lot of the stuff I remember very early on, was the win over Tennessee, in 2022, where AJ Brown had that huge day, and just hearing him kind of talk about the ways that they said, all right, we knew that the Titans were going to come out in this kind of coverage with Shane Bowen, the defensive coordinator at the time. They were going to come out in this kind of coverage. So these were the route concepts that we wanted to be able to use and utilize in the game plan this week to be able to attack that coverage and get AJ Brown one-on-one with a safety, right? And so to me, that's where, in my mind, that's why I think that it's going to be a little bit more predicated on the downfield passing attack. And that's something, I'm excited to see, because it's something that Jalen has shown in years past, that he can be that type of downfield thrower. And whether that's AJ Brown or Devontae Smith, we've seen both guys be that player for Jalen Hurts and for this Eagles offense.
So I'm on a different browser. Maybe the browser is the issue. I'm trying everything. I'm so excited for the show. I mapped out
all the stops.
I mapped out an entire roadmap. So let me ask you this, because we have a lot of quarterbacks to analyze. I don't want my connection to be the story of the show here. What's your expectation for Jalen this season?
I mean, look, some people thought that I was too hard on Jalen a year ago. I think that Jalen Hurts has set a standard. I think when you look at 2022 and the majority of the 2023 season, everyone remembers the collapse in 2023, which to me is more defensive than offensive. To me, when you look at what he did, the peak of that year for Jalen Hurts, that win overtime against Buffalo at like a Financial Field in the Kelly Greens, against a good Sean McDermott defense, where he put the team on his back and scores the game-winning touchdown, and he's doing the pose to the crowd. You have the iconic shots under the lights in the Kelly Greens. Like, we should expect that he's going to play at an MVP level. He has shown for multiple seasons that he is capable of that level of play. So when he is not playing that way, that's a disappointment. And so when I looked last year, for the majority of that season, he did not do that. The second, I would say, like down the stretch, not even the second half, like certainly in the postseason, that Super Bowl was outstanding. The NFC Championship game, he was extremely efficient. To me, like, if you recapture that and we see that version of Jalen Hurts, like that's the expectation. The standard is the standard, as he says, and that's the standard I think he has set. So that I'm going in with those expectations for Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, one point that I made on the show this morning with Bill was that I think when you look at the Super Bowl last year, teams are going to try to do more of that. Teams are going to try to bottle up Saquon, right? Even if we talk about Saquon maybe not having the year that he had last year, he's such a threat. The teams are that. I think that's the approach teams are going to try to take against the Eagles, and it's going to be try to make Jalen beat you. And I believe that Jalen can. I'm expecting Jalen to throw more. And I think Jalen's going to go into this year saying, like, all right, I want Super Bowl MVP, and you're not putting me in that Burrow, Mahomes, Lamar, Josh Allen category. I'm
Yep.
in that category. I think this is going to be he won Super Bowl MVP last year. I think he's going to go after the NFL MVP this year. So that's honestly my expectation for the season.
We did our over unders. Was that last week? Whenever though, we did our preseason over unders, just trying to anticipate like what this season would look like, and we were both on the same page, right? Where it was like, all right, we expect you're not going to get the same level of volume for Saquon Barkley, and therefore you're going to almost certainly get increased volume for Jalen Hurts and for this pass game. I mean, yeah, I would expect that he's going to be now. The big thing is he going to match that level of play early on? They come out throwing. Like, what version of Jalen Hurts do we get? If we get that version of Jalen Hurts that we saw down the stretch and we saw for those previous 2 seasons, this offense is going to be very, very difficult to stop, because at any point, like, you get into the fourth quarter and you have Saquon Barkley, and that's where you're able to lean on him. I think in the Eagles' perfect world, that's the way he's used. You're not leaning on Saquon as the bell cow, and now he just becomes a finisher for you.
That was the big deal. If you stick with us, you'll find the answer to 2 questions. The first being, how's Tanner McKee going to do as QB2? The second being, is this browser change the key to success in a perfect streaming? Stick with us after this break.
All right, Fran, here's an impression of me from yesterday.
Okay.
That's me walking into my house, sweating like a pig, because it is feeling like a sauna in there.
Yeah, I mean, you know how it is this time of year. This Philly heat, it's no joke.
So, what do? Do I go jump in a lake? It's not going to happen. So, I just got a bunch of ice, held it, rubbed it on my face, stuffed it down my shirt, stuffed it down my pants. Only way I could think to cool down.
I mean, stop being the stereotypical dad, though. Like, turn on the AC. It's time to fire that thing up.
I don't want to be. I want to waste money. Be energy efficient.
Well, look, instead of icing yourself out or jumping into a lake, you could just check out Pico's energy-saving rebates. They've got deals on Energy Star cooling equipment that actually work and cut down on your bills.
So, no more ice down my pants?
No, you could skip the ice, save the ice, and you throw in my drinks when I come over.
The same ice?
No, we'll change the ice up.
Okay, fine. That's what's up.
All right, well, just head over to pico.com/ways to save. They've got tips for everything: heating, cooling, lighting, you name it.
It is so nice seeing Bo on there. And you know what else is so nice? Seeing good quality caps, hats, right? I'm going this fall to a Penn State game, and I'm going with my whole family. And this is the thing. We all have different styles of hats, right? My wife likes the trucker hat. My son likes the snapback hat. I like more of like the fitted dad hat, if you will. And the good thing is Branded Bills has you covered with performance and with style. If you're looking for some gear to make your brand stand apart from the crowd, Branded Bills has you covered with the best custom headwear. Start your order and their dedicated team will help you create the exact custom apparel that you already need or that you need. Now, I mentioned Penn State. The reason I did is because they have a partnership with Penn State as part of their campus collection. So make sure you go to Branded Bills. Head to brandedbills.com and use code BBPHLY for 15% off your first order. Fran, in that parade on July 4th, were you wearing a hat or were you going just fresh head? Okay.
No, I gotta go the hat. I mean, with the sun that we've had, as Bo and I alluded to in our Pico read, it's definitely hat time right now in the Duffy household.
What's your preferred hat style?
I kind of bounce back and forth.
Okay.
I've got one of the ones here, one of my go-tos.
Oh, I like this. We're getting a tour.
That's right. Yeah, I got one of my go-tos. So we're going just basic.
That's trucker.
Breathable. Yeah, breathable hat. Yeah, exactly. So I like to be a little bit breathable, but as I mentioned last week on the show when I first did that the Branded Bills, I've got like an outdoor hat, I've got a beach hat, I've got so we try and mix it up a little bit.
And then last parade question, because you talked about this on the show. You've actually been a part of an Eagles Super Bowl parade before. How does this parade compare to the last? How does this parade compare to the Eagles Super Bowl parade?
It was a little different. A lot more walking in this one. It's just because we because they block off the parade path. So you got to get there. So it was like a mile walk from my mom's house to the start of the parade route. And then it was a couple miles in the parade and then walking back to the car after. So Francis was wiped afterwards, but it was good. It was a good day.
Now, somebody else who always wears a hat because he protects himself from the sun and has been a part of the Super Bowl parade is Tanner McKee. A little bit of a stretch on that transition, but
yeah, you got there. You got there.
Okay, I got there. And yeah, Tanner McKee's a big hat guy. He dealt with he dealt with skin cancer at one point, and so he's very cognizant of the sun. So Tanner McKee, this is a big summer for Tanner McKee. He's been a subject of intrigue or a source of intrigue during the past 2 years. First off, he was a camp crush, so that I don't know if that made the Eagles media guide, but that's certainly one of his crowning achievements.
Yeah.
He was awesome last summer too. You could argue that he outperformed Marcus Mariota 2 summers ago, and that he outperformed Kenny Pickett last summer.
Yep.
And certainly the Eagles feel good enough about about Tanner McKee that he is now the number 2 quarterback and like the unquestioned number 2 quarterback. So to begin with here, training camp wise, what's your expectation for Tanner McKee? What would you like to see from him?
Yeah, I think more of the same of what we've come to see. You outlined, how he's looked the last 2 summers. Obviously as a rookie, you're swimming a little bit. You're always going to be it's going to be an uphill battle for you. But in year 2, I thought he looked better. And honestly, I would expect that upward trend to continue. We know that development is not always necessarily linear. But I think when you're looking at the small sample of training camp and just the overall comfortability of a player in now his 3rd year in the NFL, I would expect that we're going to see the best of Tanner McKee here this summer. Now, what you don't want is Jalen having an inconsistent summer, and then Tanner looks awesome, right? You don't even want that to creep into the zeitgeist, right? You don't even want that to be discussed. So ideally, all the quarterbacks look sharp, all the quarterbacks look comfortable, they look confident, and everybody's kind of cutting it loose. It is going to be interesting that Tanner now the designated to, we know going in what the pecking order is. Whereas Mariota was the guy certainly in McKee's rookie year, and then last year it was is it going to be Pickett or is it going to be McKee? Yeah. Now we know that it's going to be McKee. How does he handle that? That is a change in the dynamic, certainly for a young player.
Are you expecting Tanner McKee to play most of the preseason? Do you think the Eagles are because in the past, Mariota was the clear number 2 years ago. Pickett was the number 2 last year, but there was maybe a competition, even though Pickett was the guy, but they had this young quarterback in McKee that they want to get on the field. Year 3 here, are you expecting McKee? I guess what kind of preseason playing time are you expecting from him?
I would expect that he's going to get a healthy dose. I think, look, there are certainly people in that building that have faith that he could be a starting level quarterback in the NFL. He is capable of that kind of upside. And so I think at the end of the day, if you've got the ability to showcase that, I don't think that that's the primary motivator by any stretch, but I think when you're looking, you want to be able to see Tanner McKee go out there and show that he can operate the Eagles offense, but then also operate any of 31 other offenses as well. And so I think that we'll see plenty of action here for Tanner McKee this summer.
Yeah, I like the way Tanner McKee looked last season, especially, right? The Dallas game, the Giants game, that stood out to me. That spoke to me more than training camp in a controlled setting. That spoke to me more than in the preseason games. I thought he looked the part. You have to remember that the Giants defense he was playing, even though that wasn't a team trying to make the playoffs, he wasn't playing against preseason players. He was playing with down the depth chart guys for the most part for the Eagles, and he was making plays in that finale. The way he stepped in for Pickett against Dallas stood out, and I want to see Pickett. I want to see McKee pick up where he left off there. And what always jumped out to me was how quickly he made decisions. He got rid of the ball quickly. Part of that is because he obviously doesn't have the same ability to extend plays as Hurts and Pickett did. Pickett can move, Pickett could scoot. Same thing with Mariota, right? So in McKee's case, it has the ball has to be out quickly, and he was able to do that. And so I want to see a continuation of that. I think that he could mix in more now with some of these top of the depth chart players, right? He was pretty far down the pecking hole. Down the pecking order, and you could see more from him now, whether it's in 7-on-7s, whether even 11-on-11 sometimes, mixing in with maybe not AJ or Devontae as much, but guys who are going to be on the team this year. So I want to see a lot from him there. I'm expecting a good jump from McKee this year. There's continuity in terms of the offensive game plan. There's continuity in terms of the offensive coaching staff. I'm eager to see what Tanner McKee has this year. So
yeah,
so
and
let me
to your point too about maybe seeing some. Yeah, go ahead. I was gonna say to your point about potentially like seeing increased reps with him with the ones. I mean, that's something that wouldn't shock me if we see that like on a random like move the field period. At the end of practice where they have those scrimmage type situations, and Nick Sirianni says, "Hey, like Jalen out, Tanner in."
Is this Fran? I think your connection is slow now, or is this mine?
Don't know if it's you or me, but
Okay.
my guess is it might be both of us there.
Okay. So people are saying it's Fran there. I need to be as
So we're
smooth.
back.
Yeah, I need to be as smooth as Fran was. We have a little role reversal here. Look at that. Okay, as they're saying. So I'm gonna pick up here with the solo show. I was talking with Bill about how this is the hardest thing to do, and so here I am being challenged for it. So in Tanner McKee's case, one of the things that I am curious about, and I think it'll be a quick no for the Eagles, but this is, you could say this is kind of like talk. I would say welcome back, Fran. Good to see you. And then sorry to see you go. So excited when you eventually come back. You could say this is more talk radio fodder, but it's something that you can't categorically eliminate here. And it's this: what if Tanner McKee looks awesome this summer? What if there's an injury somewhere else? What if in New Orleans they're just dissatisfied with the way their quarterbacks are coming on, or similar to the Minnesota situation back when Teddy Bridgewater went down, a team is looking for a quarterback in mid to late August. Now, clearly, I think the player that would be of most interest to those teams would be Kirk Cousins, right? Kirk Cousins is probably the top backup quarterback in the league right now. But what's to say that Tanner McKee in that first preseason game, what is that, against Cincinnati, just comes out and you're like, man, this guy is a legit starting quarterback in the league. If that were to happen, and again, you don't read too much into preseason, but the preamble here is, would the Eagles make a move would, if a team said, here's a second round pick that could turn into a first round pick, would the Eagles consider that? Knowing the way that Jeffrey Lurie values backup quarterbacks, in that case, you would need to be really confident in Kyle McCord, or there would need to be a veteran available that you're going to sign. But I'm fascinated by this because I don't think it's inconceivable that Tanner McKee, with 2 years of team control, given that he obviously looked good last summer, given that he looked good against the Cowboys, against the Giants, that it's not inconceivable that a team throws something at you. But that price would, welcome back here, Fran. And I'm going to pitch this question to you because I'm the scenario that I outlined is, if there was an injury somewhere, if there were an injury at a different camp, or maybe underperformance in New Orleans, something like that, and Tanner McKee comes in that first preseason game against Cincinnati, and you're like, wow, this is Sam Bradford against Green Bay in 2015. And you combine that with the tape last year, and someone calls up Howie and says, Howie, I will give you a 2026 second round pick that could turn into a first round pick based on some type of performance incentives. Knowing the way the Eagles value backup quarterbacks, is that a definite no? Is it, ooh, we're intrigued? Is it dependent upon how McCord looks or the availability of a veteran backup? Or is it like unequivocally, we have this promising quarterback under team control for 2 years. We're a Super Bowl contender. Jalen Hurts has missed time. Quarterbacks miss time. We don't want to expose ourselves with the backup spot.
My gut says it would need to be a very big overpay to get the Eagles to trade Tanner McKee before the season, and McCord would have to look awesome. Like you'd have to have ultimate faith in Kyle McCord and/or Dorian Thompson-Robinson to come in and be the backup. Which again, like remember what Tanner McKee showed as a rookie. They still said like, all right, we're going to go and trade for Kenny Pickett, right? Like, so they want to have that thing set. And so to me, like if they're going to move off McKee, you have to feel really good about the other options, and it would require an overpay. So I think, it was the PHLY package was a 2 and change, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're close. But it's still a big ask. This is the team that obviously has Super Bowl aspirations.
Yeah, and the big difference with the PHLY thing is it happened during the offseason. Like I think if New Orleans called back during the summer, during the spring and said we want McKee, this is what we'll offer, it's a different conversation than in August. Because you're absolutely correct that a team that has Super Bowl aspirations will not go into the season with uncertainty at backup quarterback. A matter of fact, and I know the Eagles weren't a Super Bowl contender that year, but I think back to the 2019 season when the Eagles did not bring back. They were going into in the training camp in the preseason with Sudfeld as their number 2, right? They had just let Nick Foles go. Sudfeld gets hurt early on, and the Eagles didn't see enough of Sudfeld at that point. So what do? They go and they sign Josh McCown before the season, so they have that type of certainty at backup quarterback. This is if you just look at it, 2018 2017 Nick Foles, 2018 Nick Foles, 2019 it was Josh McCown, 2020 it was Jalen Hurts as the backup quarterback. 2021 Joe Flacco, 2022 Marcus Mariota, 2023. Right. I mean, you just keep looking on down the list of, I'm sorry, 22 was Gardner Minshew. 23 was Marcus Mariota. Last year, Kenny Pickett. Jeffrey Lurie, this is a bedrock principle of his. Howie Roseman believes the same thing. It would befuddle me, or I shouldn't say befuddle. It would. I don't think the Eagles would go into the season with Kyle McCord as the backup. So I think it would require the availability of another veteran. But it wouldn't surprise me if after that first preseason game against Cincinnati, if there's like significant league-wide Tanner McKee buzz. And let me ask you this. If that were to happen, is Bo Wolf proud that he, quote-unquote, invented Tanner McKee? Tanner McKee's too popular now? I need to go hang out at this table, at the Sua Opeta table. What's Bo's approach if you turn on Good Morning Football on August 12th and it's like, let me tell you guys about someone you don't know who you need to know, and that's Tanner McKee.
Yeah, I mean, my guess is that Bo will take the proud I discovered Tanner McKee angle of it. I think that what would then happen is whoever the trading GM is, that is now number 1 on his GM rankings. This guy knows ball. I think that would be the approach. I'm looking at the best available quarterback free agents and some names really quick. So Tyler Huntley, Mike White, Jeff Driscoll, Teddy Bridgewater, CJ Third, Desmond Ridder. But then the other big one, the big name at the top of the list, former number 2 overall pick, Carson Wentz.
Yeah, I would say that's a no. That'd be a fascinating story, but I would say right now that is a no. That is not happening. If you stick around after this, you will find out what we make of the Kyle McCord, Dorian Thompson-Robinson conversation or competition, and you will find out if Fran Duffy's connection stays strong enough to last to the overtime period of the show. Hang with us. Let me tell everyone here about Parx Casino. If you watched this morning, you know that I spoke about Parx Casino quite a bit. And there's always another way to win on the BetParx online casino app. Check out brand new casino games like Huff and More Puff and Fire Blaze Sky Queen, a BetParx exclusive. It's the only app I ever use to play all my favorite casino games in the palm of my hand. Play blackjack, roulette, craps, poker, baccarat, and hot online slots like Cash Eruption, 88 Fortunes, and Cleopatra online slots. Play hot online slots based on your favorite streaming shows: Walking Dead, Squid Game, Breaking Bad, and Peaky Blinders, and all your favorite classic casino games from wherever you are. New users get up to $1,000 casino bonus back if you're down in the first 24 hours. Go to betparks.com and download the app right now and enjoy all the action and excitement from the casino at your fingertips. You must be 21 and older in NPA, New Jersey, Maryland, and or Michigan for Bet Parks. You love to play. You play to win. You bet Bet Parks. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
So now we'll hear from our friends over with Shady Rays. Now, a couple weeks ago, my family and I, we were down in Disney World, and one of the things that we forgot to pack for Francis was his sunglasses. And so it was one of our first days in the park. We walk into Epcot, and we were like, all right, let's get him just a quick pair of sunglasses. All right, so we go, we stop, we buy a pair of sunglasses. He has them on. And one of the first rides we did of the day that day was the Guardians of the Galaxy ride. One of the best rides down there in all the parks. Outstanding. One of the best roller coasters I've been on. It was really, really fun. Francis was juiced up, all excited, coming off it, and there's stairs coming down. There's concrete steps coming down to get back out to the exit of the building. And he was so excited talking about the ride that he took a bad step, took a little spill. He was fine, but the glasses go flying off his head and they snap, they break on the steps. We're out of luck. We got to get new glasses. They're not going to do a return that way. If we had gotten Shady Rays, guess what? We would have been prepared for that because they've got the best replacement, the best replacement plan in all of sunglasses. Really, you're not going to find anything better because we all know that moment when you either lose your favorite pair or you break your favorite pair. Well, look, when you've got Shady Rays, they changed the game because these sunglasses are all made for real life. Not to mention, like, good looking, they're polarized, they're durable, they're stupidly already just the inexpensive, just unbelievable, the value you get with Shady Rays. And again, if you lose your pair, if you break your pair, even the first day, even just 90 minutes after you purchase them, Shady Rays is going to send you a brand new pair, guilt-free, just replacement. So look, you want to get sunglasses, no fear. I mean, you use them for all the different uses. You got hikes, see concerts, boat, whatever, the beach. Shady Rays, they are the eyewear that has your back. We have teamed up here with Shady Rays to bring you an exclusive offer. You head over to shadyrays.com, use code PHLY for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people.
Welcome back here. And I want to, before we get into the QB3 competition, let's get to our super chat. I appreciate the contribution from Polar Jam, who asks, is this why people think we have to return to office work? So, Polar Jam, I'm going to defend myself and humiliate myself a bit at the same time, okay? First thing, I am like maniacal about making sure that my connection is strong for these types of shows, to the point that I made sure I got hardwired in my office here. And the only thing that would prevent the hardwire from working is either if the internet doesn't work or if I were to kick it. So I thought the kicking was the problem. But now I'm going to humiliate myself here. And Bo, if he's listening right now in some undisclosed location that we might have disclosed already last week, he is going to roll his eyes and say, I know this to be the fact. I know this to be the case. I am easily seduced by updates for apps, or like for, I don't know if easily seduced is the right term I should use. I think
that's the right term in your case. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I will always update if there's an app, if there's a browser update, I will do that. If there's for the iOS, I raised my hand to be the first one in the beta. Okay. I am beta testing everything. I will be on Sequoia before anybody else because I am enthralled by anything new. So this is my theory about what occurred, at least in my case here. I recently updated, last night, I made a browser update. I haven't used the program that we use for virtual shows since then. My guess is that my update is ahead of the system that we use, because once I switched to a different browser, it worked fine. So I think the issue here was not the connection, it was the browser. So I probably would have been better off not updating it. You know, they always say like the first one through the wall always gets hurt. And they say that Aaron Sorkin says that. And so that was the error in my ways here. I can't speak for Fran's connection, but with me, it certainly seems like the browser, and from talking to Julia in the private chat, it sounds like this browser has caused some issues before.
Well, I changed when I dropped out. I changed browsers, and now I am as good as gold for the time being. Knock on wood. So there could be something there, but I will say, I mean, we've got a lot to chew on by the time we get to overtime in 15 minutes. But
Yes.
The easily seduced Zach Berman, yeah, that might make me a reappearance here.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough. So let's talk about something else that also excites me, and that is a Philadelphia area quarterback, right? Kyle McCord from the Philly area and Syracuse, with Ohio State in between. Former top recruit. Eagles take him. And he's competing here for the number 3 spot with Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Let's put the two of them together. Fran, you're best qualified of anyone to answer this because you evaluated both players coming out. And these are players really who there isn't that much NFL work to look at. You're probably looking at, certainly in McCord's case, they're looking at their college eval. In Thompson-Robinson's case, they acquired him based on their college eval. What are you expecting this summer from both those quarterbacks?
Yeah, definitely different in terms of like the archetype of quarterback. You know, I think when you're looking at Dorian Thompson-Robinson, you know, he's going to get by with his creativity, you know, as a runner, his ability to win as a scrambler. He was a productive passer in Chip Kelly's offense, you know, out there at UCLA. So it's not that he's a bad passer, but the value that he will bring will be late in the down, you know, with his legs. And it's going to be with the quick decision making before that if he can't get to that point. So I think when you're looking at DTR, some of his best stuff might come more so in the preseason when there's live tackling and he's got to avoid the rush, as opposed to in a practice setting where that won't always be the case. But I think when you're looking at that, that's what you're hoping to see, is that, you know, maybe if it doesn't look great in practice, can it look good, you know, when you get into the games, those games late in the summer? So that's something certainly to watch with DTR. And then with McCord, look, this is his first summer, obviously, as a rookie. I think that's a lot of the things that you were hoping to start, some of the things we did see from Tanner McKee in his rookie year, where just want to see that he belongs, right? I mean, we all saw like very early that it just wasn't going to work with Clayton Thorson, right? That's why he didn't make the 53, you know, out of camp, and he ends up signing somewhere else before the start of the regular season. I think when you're looking at McCord, like that's the benchmark is, all right, look like you belong, right? You don't look like you're completely like a fish out of water by the time we get to, 10 days in camp, 12 days in camp. By that point, you want to have an idea like, okay, like there's something here with Kyle McCord.
Are you expecting an even, fair competition, or do you think the deck is going to be stacked in favor of Kyle McCord, the draft pick?
You know, my guess is that would be an even competition, and we know that look, Jalen's going to get the lion's share of reps, and you're going to get plenty of reps there for Tanner McKee. Both guys are healthy. That's where the majority of these reps are going to go. Typically, you know, what we see is, okay, let's say it's a 12 period rep or a 12 period drill rather, right? So it's 12 plays in the script. You might get 6 for Jalen Hurts, 4 for Tanner McKee, and then 2 for whoever the third string quarterback is. Since it's 2 guys splitting that job, then one period it's going to be DTR and one period it's going to be McCord in some order. And so, and they might switch that every day in terms of who's getting the majority, who gets the first look. But that's going to be like how that snap dispersal goes. Now that obviously those guys are going to get the developmental periods and things like that towards the end of practice to be able to kind of hone in on their craft. But a lot of that, honestly, Zach, and you know this, but just for the sake of our listeners, a lot of that is going to be determined by how those guys have attacked the rest of this offseason up to this point. Like if DTR has been head and shoulders ahead of Kyle McCord from like in the classroom and just understanding the offense, he's going to earn more. He's going to earn more reps. He's going to earn that early look. So if one guy is definitely further ahead from, in terms of like that snap share in practice, that should be a hint. Like, all right, like this guy was just nails. He was so much better. Showed the coaching staff a lot more off the field. So that would be something to watch. But my guess is it's more likely that we're going to see like an even split, especially at the start of camp.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not just saying this to butter up Fran, but I've always thought Fran's practice notes were the best practice notes when he was at PHLYEagles.com. And then, Bo, I've called Bo an
Sure, I'm sure Bo, if he hears that, won't have anything to say when he returns in a couple weeks.
I called Bo. I mean, look, and I was about to say Bo's an astute practice observer, and is awesome. Bo's practice notes are terrific, and so this is a preamble as a way of saying I take what Fran and Bo see like most seriously, but to my, I don't want to say untrained eye, but to my trained eye, but not as trained as Fran's eye. I thought Kyle McCord looked better during the spring. I thought Kyle McCord was clearly the number 3. But to the point about the draft investment, it's a 6th-round pick. The Eagles would be willing to move on from a 6th-round pick, right? This is not like that's not the type of investment that brings you onto the team. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, he was a 5th-round pick a few years ago, not by the Eagles, but the Eagles brought him in for a top 30 visit. He's someone that the Eagles have clearly had interest in. The Eagles didn't have to take him back in that trade. Like you could say he was a throw-in, but that's someone that the Eagles wanted back in that trade was DTR. They did not know if they were going to land Kyle McCord in the draft, right? So there was a world in which the Eagles were okay going into this summer with Dorian Thompson-Robinson as the number 3 quarterback. So I don't want to dismiss Dorian Thompson-Robinson, but I do think that Kyle McCord has clearly been better. But or I should say was better. But to what Fran was saying, you're not going to see a lot of reps from these guys during training camp. I think this is more. I don't think the question here is what we will have to see in camp. Yep. I think this is going to come down to the 3rd preseason game more than anything else, and maybe like the 4th quarter, some of the other preseason games. But I think it's going to be that 3rd preseason game. My guess is McKee doesn't play then, and it'll be McCord and Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and which one looks better in that game.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. It's going to be to me like what we see from the preseason games, and like you mentioned, I think the big thing, especially at this position, really it is the case with all positions though, is that's why reading into the depth charts when we get into training camp with practices is big, because it can be they can kind of show a little bit in terms of what the guys are bringing off the field, in the classroom, in the weight room, like all the work ethic stuff. Like if guys are buried on the depth chart versus a guy that we didn't expect that all of a sudden, rises, you're earning that opportunity, not just from, 30 practice reps over the last 2 days, but with the work that you're doing over the course of the entire day at the facility.
So the last person that I want to talk to you about is Scott Leffler. Okay. The new quarterbacks coach. Because we'll have a chance to speak to him for the first time this summer, but more we'll be able to see him up close. And the Eagles we've talked a lot on the show about offensive coordinators, but the Eagles have changed quarterbacks coaches every single year here, right? I mean, you look at after Brian Johnson's promotion, okay, so you've had a different quarterback coach every single year. You had Alex Tanney, right? You had Doug Nussmeier. Now you had Scott Leffler. So that's 4 different quarterbacks coaches in 4 years. In Leffler's case, he probably comes in with Doug Nussmeier had been a longtime quarterbacks coach in the league, had been a college OC, but Scott Leffler's been a head coach in college football, and like a decently regarded head coach. He's someone whose offensive mind has earned praise. What are you looking to see from Scott Leffler as a quarterbacks coach this summer?
Yeah, I think that he is more the archetype of Nussmeier, where this is a guy that's going to come in like heavy-handed. His voice is going to carry weight in that room. Everyone that's willing to listen, like it's not going. This is not Alex Tanney. Oh, like young guy on the job, like young guy from college. Like Scott Leffler has coached some big-time quarterbacks, extremely productive pass games. Has it all been the sunshine and rainbows over the course of his career for every offense he's been involved in? No, but like extremely well respected, and again, like a guy that's been around and has been around some great players. So I think that that voice is going to carry a lot of weight. I'm fascinated to see some of the stuff that he is able to bring to the table, not just from what is he going to be like every single day at practice, doing drills, but also schematically, like what are some of the wrinkles that he can bring? Because we know that, assistant coaches are given certain areas of the offense where it's kind of like their area that they're responsible for in the game plan each week. And while, all things are going to settle in with Nick Sirianni and with Kevin Patullo, is he responsible for the first and second down pass, drop back pass game, right? Or is he responsible for third down or the red zone, whatever area that is? I think that'll be interesting to see as well.
And in Leffler's case too, he's working with, a first time OC. Kevin Patullo is a first time OC. So when you talk about the quarterbacks, one thing I want to pay attention to is like how and where is Kevin Patullo allocating his time?
Yeah.
Because you have to think when the Eagles bring in Kellen Moore as the offensive coordinator, this is a former college quarterback, former NFL quarterback whose background is with quarterbacks, right? When Brian Johnson was the OC, this is a former college quarterback coach. He former quarterbacks coach with the Eagles, right? So he has that background in the quarterback room. When you go back, even the Shane Steichen, right? Well, I should mention Alex Tanney, former NFL quarterback, right? But no, from the offensive coordinator perspective, Shane Steichen, background with quarterbacks, former college quarterback. Kevin Patullo, he's been a quarterbacks coach in the league, but he spent a lot of time with wide receivers. And as the passing game coordinator during the past 4 seasons, he's kind of spread. He's been spread all over the place. So he's obviously going to be working closely with Jalen Hurts. But I want to see how much time Patullo is spending with the quarterbacks in position drills. I always think back, and I'm sure you recall this well, to 2016, 2017, when the Eagles had that quote unquote like quarterback incubator with Doug Peterson, Frank Reich, and John DeFilippo. And there were literally drills where it was Doug Peterson, Frank Reich, and John DeFilippo watching the quarterbacks. And you're like, is there any other position on the field that matters here? Like everyone here is watching the quarterbacks. So I'm curious to see how much time is spent with the quarterbacks from those quarterback coaches. From obviously, we know Nick Sirianni is going to be roaming around, but with Kevin Patullo in particular.
Especially because Kevin Patullo, for the most part, during training camp, during practices we've had access to, like he has mostly been with the receivers, working with Aaron Moorhead in that group. And so, is he going to divert more of his time towards, obviously he will be diverting more of his time towards Jalen Hurts, towards Saquon Barkley, but how much time will he still spend over with the receivers? Will Nick Sirianni spend more time with the receivers knowing that Patullo's not there? That will be interesting to watch, certainly.
And then the last thing with the quarterbacks here, and I don't ask this in jest. I ask this honestly. We haven't had this conversation, you and I.
Okay.
Quarterback stats during training camp is a hot button. It's a topic that is relatively polarizing. And look, Elliot Short Parks is a close friend of mine from WIP. He's built this brand around quarterback stats, but he's not the only one who does this. And you see this around the NFL. I'm curious how much quarterback stats during training camp matter. Should they matter? Do you keep the quarterback stats yourself, or can it be constructive at all?
All due respect, obviously, to Elliot, notwithstanding. No, I don't care about quarterback stats during camp. I mentioned earlier that at the end of the day, you don't necessarily, just because Jalen Hurts is 19 of 21 with 3 touchdowns in the day, there might have been throws that he missed, because there are times when we watch film and the stat line was pretty good. But he missed this throw, or he missed that read, or should have gone here. To me, that is not all that indicative of a really, really strong day. And again, that is much better than, oh man, Jalen 13 balls hit the ground and he threw 3 picks today. You don't want that. But I don't think that necessarily just because 2 passes were incomplete yesterday, that is, he had an outstanding day overall.
If you want to hear what I think about this topic, and probably get made fun of for something I said earlier in the show, make sure you tune in to Overtime. I was even 30 seconds early on this one. So here, I don't keep quarterback stats. I do keep play-by-play of 11 on 11 for my notes. And 7 on 7s, I guess, too. I don't typically add up the stats at the end. I don't keep yards.
Right.
Because I actually think, and credit to it's just hard sometimes to decipher the yards.
Correct.
I keep completion or incompletion, the intended target, that kind of thing. It allows me to see, to measure, like, if the ball's not hitting the ground, that's a good day. If the ball's getting, if it's getting intercepted, if it's incomplete, I know there could be a lot going into it. It's like the pitcher testing out different pitches. You hear that, but that could also be an indication of a bad day. I view this more overall. Like, take the quarterback stats out of this and talk about practice observations, or we do daily shows during training camp, and I hear some fans, some fans eat up every detail, right? Other fans are like, you're making way too big a deal about a single practice. And my view is, like, we're there, right? That's what we're there to do. And this is the time of year. This is the time of year when we can see all the. This is the only time of year when we see all the practices. And I tend to think, like, that's what people care most about during training camp. Like, there's some real good stories that come out of training camp. I'm not dismissing that, and I love the human element, side of covering the NFL, probably more than most do. But people want to know the progress of the players, and the best way to do that is, like, by chronicling what you see, what you observe during practice.
Yeah. How many times have we seen where a guy comes out and he has a really good camp, and then that doesn't mean anything moving into the fall? It goes the other way as well. I mean, one of the worst, 3 weeks of practice that I've seen from any defensive player was Patrick Robinson in 2017.
Yeah.
And then he went on to have a really strong year as the starting corner the starting nickel corner for the Super Bowl team in 2017. Right. So, I think it can work both ways. But I agree with you. Like, you're there to describe what happened that day. But I think providing the right finding the way to provide that context is what is most important, right? And so, whether that is through numbers, or whether it's through the anecdotal, the analysis of a play-to-play standpoint, finding that way, everybody's going to find their lane.
Yeah, and I'll give you an example. Training camp a few years ago, Miles Sanders was taking more work with the threes, or not with the ones. He was mixing in, and it was atypical relative to what they did. And so I didn't make it I didn't say Miles Sanders isn't the starting running back, but part of why you're there is to chronicle what's happening in front of your eyes.
Yep.
And also, like you said, sometimes it doesn't matter at all, because you go back to 2017, Nick Foles had a bad summer. He missed the spring because his wife was pregnant and was about to have a baby. He struggled with his health during the summer when he was on the field. Then he missed time to the point that it was a legitimate question going into that season. Can they trust Nick Foles as the backup quarterback? And then we all know how that season ended. So sometimes it tells a lot, other times it does not. But that's kind of my defense of training camp. Now, I'm going to be self-deprecating here again, because I was on the beach the other day. Very nice guy comes up to me. He says, "I have a question for you." And yeah, I'm all ears, right? And he says, the sophomoric humor on the show, does it go completely over your head, or is that like an act? And I'm like, look, sometimes I know what the innuendo is, and I don't want to go there. I don't want to say it, so I'll just plead innocence, but I have a sense. But other times, I just screw up, right? It's a live show. So today I said something, I probably I could have had better word choice than saying I am easily seduced by updates on browsers or apps. And that's one where, pause before I talk and think, is this the best word choice to use? So I admit that I'll raise my hand. Sometimes I bring this onto myself, and I can't blame Bo. I can't blame the fact that we're doing a daily show. So I got to do better in that case. So a little faux pas by me.
Look, that to me, that is forgivable. That was not a big deal. I do want to bring it back to the beginning when to me, all right, we're dropping connections. We're going.
Yeah.
Can we get back to the clam chowder of it all? Like, hey, can
Oh
we get
yeah,
back
all
to
right. I'm happy to
the
discuss
mixing
this.
of the red and white? So I looked it up at one point on the show. I think you were doing the ad read or it was during the Pico read, and apparently this is a thing where you can mix the red and the white. You can mix
Yes.
the Manhattan clam chowder and the New England clam chowder, and it is called Long Island clam chowder.
Yeah,
I've
okay.
never heard of it before, but that is fascinating to me. When the first was this something that you brought up, or was this something that the waiter or waitress had brought up to you the first time you did it?
Door number 3, the next table over, I saw someone do it, and I'm like, I was wondering, I'm like, what's that? What's that clam chowder? Is that hot? Because I put hot sauce in my New England clam chowder all the time, so I'm used to seeing the New England clam chowder
the color
with some streaks of red in it.
Right.
But this was more than streaks of red. This was a clam chowder that was almost pink, and now not pink like a bisque, but you had your white clam chowder, and then you had enough red mixed in there that the hue of the clam chowder changed. And I was intrigued, and I asked what it was. Excuse me, what kind of clam chowder is that? Right? And they said,
how did you know it was clam chowder though?
Because that's what they serve here. It's
Okay,
like, you know, they're known for their chowder. Like I mean, I gotta say, I brought, 2 quarts of clam chowder home. Quarts or pints, I think. Yeah, quarts. 2 quarts of clam chowder home, and I was eating clam chowder for breakfast. And Emily was like, "It's 90 degrees, and you're having clam." I was like, "This, I am obsessed with Smitty's clam chowder. Obsessed.
Okay.
Like it is what it is. I love the shore. I met my wife down the shore, or I proposed my wife down the shore, and maybe my favorite thing at the shore is the Smitty's clam chowder. So, yeah, this was a few years ago that I started mixing the red and the white, and it's great because I'm more of a white clam chowder. I'm more of a New England clam chowder person, generally speaking, but I like a kick in it, and that's why I put the hot sauce. But when you mix the Manhattan, you're getting like, the spice of the Manhattan in with the cream of the New England.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it was called a Long Island a clam chowder, but I am unabashed to the point that I will tell them half red, half white, because they have the big bowls that they scoop it out of and they put it in, and they don't blink an eye. I think other people do this at Smitty's too. But if you don't, I highly recommend go to Smitty's, get the half white, half red. It is the absolute best.
I will say my first initial reaction as I computed it was, this is like getting I can't decide between the marinara and the Alfredo, so I'll just throw both in the bowl. That was like my, but apparently it's a thing. So I trust your palate. If you say it tastes good, I'm sure it does.
So I have a confession here. Out to dinner Saturday night. Sorry, because it was because July 4th was Friday. Friday felt like Saturday, right? Did you have that this weekend?
No question. Yes.
Okay, yeah. So out to dinner Saturday night, and I get crab pasta for dinner. Okay. And they offer it red and white. Okay. The marinara and then the oil and garlic.
Yep.
And I went oil and garlic, but I wanted to ask them, would you mix the marinara and the oil and garlic to have bring the best of both worlds in here, half marinara, half oil and garlic? I thought that might be a violation because
you're high off your own supply at this point. You're just being too brazen.
Yeah, because I thought that would take the chef preparing it 2 different ways. Whereas the clam chowder, you're just taking a spoon of this and a spoon of that and putting it together. It's really it's very tedious. I'm sorry, it's really not significant to work. I thought by doing the red and the white, I'd be asking them to essentially do 2 different crab pastas, and I thought that'd be too much to ask. Am I correct in that?
I think so. I am, as our viewers, our listeners know, I started the bear. I am just about caught up. I am midway. I'm about to watch episode 7 of season 4. I've flown through it. Loved the first 2 seasons, but there is a scene in it where someone asks for an adjustment on it, and they're like, "No, this is how we make it." So I think that would probably be the case there with the crab pasta.
Yeah, and I am so. sometimes I would ask, like, I don't ask for an adjustment, like because Emily, my wife, I love her more than anything, but she is the queen of, can I have this without this and this, add this, like take this off. And I'm like, you're creating your own dish at that point, right? So then, she orders first and then I'm up next. And I'm like, I'll have this exactly as it's described on the menu, almost as an apology to the waiter or the waitress that he or she had to take the whole to take the whole order before.
Will you adjust your order at like midstream, like if that were to happen?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna customize. I am not gonna customize two things. But I tolerate that. Like, I get it. Sometimes maybe you have a certain allergy. Maybe you just don't eat. You just don't eat something like that. I don't eat a lot of salt, so I'll say, please, can you hold back the salt, something like that. The one thing I would never do is send a dish back.
Right.
It could be
Yes.
the worst dish I've ever
I'm the
had.
same way. Yep.
I am not sending it back. I saw the movie Road Trip, and ever since I saw the movie Road Trip, I don't think I ever sent something back before then, but that taught me to never send something back. Joya says, what if it was undercooked?
No,
So Joya, I know Joya doesn't want to come on the screen. Can you type in? Oh, and Joya has, so Joya has direct access to the chef. That's interesting. So what would be something that's undercooked? Because I'm thinking like a steak, that's okay.
Severely undercooked.
Severely undercooked.
Like if it were severely chicken.
Yeah. Honestly, I got to say this. If the chicken's undercooked, why am I eating out at your restaurant at that point?
Right.
Like I can make chicken on my own. I'm counting on it. If I'm getting the chicken at the restaurant, like I'm not sending it back, but I'm probably not going back to that restaurant at that point if you're undercooking the chicken.
If the chicken's undercooked, honestly, like that's on the oven because we know the oven does most of the work.
I'll never live that one down. The guilty as charged there. But yeah, Joya knows the chef world well, so I get that.
So you mentioned earlier too at the start of overtime the sophomore humor going over your head. I would be remiss if I did not mention one line from last Wednesday's mailbag. So we did the mailbag episode, and this went over my head as you said it in the moment. And I had to go back and re-listen. It was brought up multiple times on social media, so I feel like I have to confirm this. It was at the end of one of the entries, one of the questions for the mailbag, and it ended with shout out SZA, and you read it as shout out SZA. Do you know what the meaning, what the that reference is to?
I believe it's the Philly Special podcast with my good friend Sheil Kapadia, also my good friends EJ Smith, Sean Syed. So yeah, I believe it's a reference to that. Yes.
Okay, I wanted to make sure that everyone, because there were so many messages from that. I was like, okay, I want to make sure that at least we're on the same. But so you at least are cognizant of what the reference was to.
Yeah, but it's like I gotta say, my son says drippy. I said drippy on the air, and it became a drop on like we clipped that and put that as a YouTube short. Can Zach pull off drippy here? So I've learned that if something is not in my lexicon every day, then don't pawn it off on the show as if it is in my lexicon. So in that case, better to be safe than sorry.
But it is, so you said it as shout out SZA. It is, we know that how it's not supposed to read.
Yes, but I want to just be true to the way it's spelled there.
To the way it's spelled. Okay, yes. Just so we'll just end it with shout out to SZA, of course.
You see, but if I said SZA, okay, that would not work out well, correct?
I mean, I think that's okay.
I would just rather say
I think you're downplaying.
Overthinking it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're overthinking this one.
Yeah. Add that to the 1,283,473rd thing that I've overthought in probably the last 24 hours. We'll be back in 23 hours to borrow, or I should say 22 hours and 45 minutes to borrow Tony Kornheiser and Michael Wilbon's expression. We will be talking about another position tomorrow. Fran and I will discuss off air what that position is. We will have better connections there because we will be in the browsers that we finished this show with. But until then, that's Fran Duffy, the top draft analyst in the business, Eagles contributor for PHLY, or I say Eagles analyst, but also mainly NFL draft analyst. Thank you to Julia. Welcome back to Julia. Thrilled to have her back. We will be back tomorrow. We will be better tomorrow. Until then, Bo will, well, I butchered this again. Bo would say, as always, we love you. I will say we'll be better tomorrow. Until then, thanks for watching.
We all silly like the mayor.